we train our children to eat vegetables. And certainly it was the way for me as a child. I remember my parents saying, eat your veg and eat your meat. And that was the priority. And I hated veg. If I didn't smother it with gravy or ketchup or something, I didn't want it. And I remember baked beans, particularly being the staple of the British diet, the Heinz baked beans. I was always really ill after those. And, my mum would say, but they're full of protein and they're really good for you. You must eat your beans. And I was always sick. And I hated cauliflower and broccoli and all of those things. But we are trained from a very young age. And it really resonated for me when you were saying about that, and you were saying that we children instinctively know what they want, and you give them veg and they don't want it, and we train them to want it, but what they do want is fruit. And that was the bit, it really kind of, every part of me went, oh, that's so right, that is so true. I really enjoyed fruit as a child, but I did not enjoy veg.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Meek Medic podcast. Now today I'm joined by my special guest, Julie Poole, who's joining us all the way from the UK. And it's very good morning to you, Julie. It's evening over here in Brisbane, but yeah, it's nice to talk to you today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good morning or good evening to you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Now, Julie, thank you for coming on the show. And you have got your own, like pretty much everybody else who's come on my show, you've got your own health journey that you wanted to talk about, how you got started in the kind of low carb keto, carnivore space. But also you are you're an author.
Yes.
You're I think, qualified hypnotist. You're a massage healer. You work also as a psychic, tarot card reader. I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff. You've got your own media presence, your own YouTube channel with over 100,000 subscribers. So, I'd love to want to pick your brain about some of these things today. And if you can maybe start with, your background and your health journey, that would be great.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I had a career in the corporate world, the business world, for about 20 years. And then when I was sort of getting into my late 30s, I decided I was done with that whole life. And I left that whole environment and retrained as a hypnotherapist, and allowed my spiritual, intuitive side that had always been there. I'd been studying the esoteric and everything to do with the spiritual side of life since I was a very young child. It was very much part of who I was. So I decided I'm going to allow this to go forward. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So my mission, my purpose is to help, inform, inspire, motivate, uplift people, educate people, not just spiritually. This isn't just about the woo-woo, airy-fairy kind of angelic realm, which I'm very much into, and most of my followers are into too. But also as a hypnotherapist, I'm very much about the mind, the belief system, the subconscious, and how it influences our behaviors and the blocks and barriers within that, and helping people. That's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, to be able to release those blocks and to move themselves forward into a life that they want to create. I went to uni 10 years after that. At 50, I went to uni and did a degree in psychology and sociology, not to become, and I'm not a psychologist, but to add more information and understanding of the way that mental health works, the mind works. And as a hypnotherapist at that time for 13 years, I already had been working a long time with this, but I wanted to know more. So that's what I've been doing. I specialised for more than 10 years with PTSD, trauma, severe stuff, particularly around childhood abuse, sexual abuse. And that's what I did for a long time. And then in 2020, I started moving more away from that and more towards training, uplifting, developing people from where they are. So that's been my kind of journey in terms of my career. And along the lines, I've written 6 books. And my latest book came out in January, called From Hoping to Having. And it's the 3 R's to create your best life: remember, reset, receive. And that reset bit in the middle is the hypnotherapist part of me, helping you to reset your thinking and your beliefs. And I brought out an affirmation book alongside that, to those affirmations to strengthen the changing in the thinking. So I've been absolutely amazed. The book's only been out for 8.5 weeks, and it's sold over 1,000 copies, and the reviews are coming in amazing reviews, which thrills me, because what people are saying, this is a game changer. It is helping me to change my thinking, my perspective, my boundaries, everything. And within that, I think of the 24 chapters, the longest one was on health. I really wanted to push we need to take responsibility for our own health and stop relying on a doctor to give you a pill, and looking underneath, why have I got this? What is going on? What do I need to do to change it? So my own journey with that, I was reasonably healthy, and reasonably happy weight for most of my adult life. I'd always suffered with digestive problems and IBS and constipation and discomfort around that. But I had been given fibre, which always made me worse. And I'd been given a prescription for indigestion for 10, 15 years. And I just lived with it, and I just got on with my little world until we got to about 2016. And that is when I went through the menopause. My period stopped, and everything went downhill very rapidly over the next 4 years. And I mean, as a healer, a therapist, an intuitive, I kept saying to my body, what's wrong? What's going on? What do I need to do to help you? And I just couldn't find any answers. I know, for example, and I dropped gluten back in 2012, and that made a huge difference. So I know that I'm gluten intolerant. But even with that, it wasn't enough to sort things out. So I'd always been around about 10 and a half stone, which is 140, 147 pounds. I think that's about 65 kilos. I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm 5'8", so that's a reasonably healthy weight. And everything was good until the menopause kicked in. And then for the next 4 years, every year I put on 10 pounds. So it just got heavier and heavier and heavier. And I ended up, by the beginning of 2020, about 196 pounds, nearly 200 pounds. So that's the obesity range. And this was just getting worse and worse. And the host of symptoms was just ridiculous. None of them serious, but I had a huge amount of inflammation. I thought that I was sort of going into arthritis. My knees hurt, my hips hurt, my joints, my fingers. There were so many things. I had constant problems with thrush, and to the point where the doctor couldn't fix it and referred me to the hospital. So then they were trying to fix it. And I had skin issues, hair and nail issues. But it was the weakness in the legs. I remember saying to my GP, I can't get off the loo without pushing myself up by my hands. My legs have not got enough energy in them, strength in them, and I eat a reasonably healthy diet. And I've never been one really for junk food. I mean, I have the odd Chinese, the odd takeaway, the odd this, that, and the other. But on the whole, I'm somebody that eats natural food, so meat and fish and veg and salad. And I was not eating a huge amount of carbs. But there was a massive shift around that time. And all of a sudden, I started getting sugar cravings. And I never had them before. I'm more of a savory person. Give me a packet of crisps, chips, and I would have that rather than have a big bowl of ice cream or something. But all of a sudden, I wanted this. And I thought, what is going on? I've never had a sweet tooth. This must be something to do with the hormones. And at the same time as the weight was going up, the energy was going down. So I was blaming the weight, because obviously the heavier we are, the way I described it to myself was, I'm carrying 40 pounds of excess weight. Imagine how many shopping bags of food that would be that you'd be carrying around. And no wonder you get tired. So I blamed the weight. And I still think that that's got a part, to play in it, certainly. But it was more than that. So eventually, come to April, May 2020, I discovered a video on YouTube all about keto, which I'd never heard of. So I was watching this chap cooking several keto recipes, and I was absolutely shocked because there he was smothering this steak in butter and cream, and added in some garlic and some mushrooms, put it with some veg, and went, there you go, that'll make you healthy. And I literally was sat there, my head couldn't compute, because we've been so trained not to eat fat and not to have, fatty meat, and red meat's terrible for you. And actually, my favorite food is steak. I am definitely a red meat eater. I don't even particularly like fish. I make myself eat it now and again because I know it's good for me with the omega-3s and all the rest of it. But I'm a steak girl. Give me a steak any time, and I'm a happy girl. So I was watching this, and my head just couldn't compute it. So I started going down the rabbit hole of watching more and more of these videos. And I discovered Dr. Eric Berg and his Keto 101. And I binge watched these, understanding about this. And because I tried everything else and nothing else was working, I thought, well, you have absolutely nothing to lose. Give it a go. If you find that you get fatter and heavier and even worse, then you can stop it, but give it a go. So that's what I decided to do. I did my research about keto flu. I got my electrolytes, and off I went. And for the next 4 weeks, I went full blown keto. And on many, many levels, many of my symptoms improved almost immediately. The first shift was 2 days in, where all those sugar cravings just went. And that was like, whoa, all of a sudden it's like, have my dinner. And I didn't want anything else. I didn't need that sugar rush. That was amazing. And then within a few days, lots of other symptoms started to improve as well. So over the next 4 weeks, fabulous. I dropped about 14 pounds in a month. And half of that was probably the inflammation, the water weight. I had no idea I even had inflammation. Many of my symptoms went. And the first thing that went was the constant thrush. Which was a game changer. The skin started to clear up. The plaque on my teeth started to go. Lots of things started to improve. But what got worse was my stomach. My digestion became much, much worse, because Eric Berg, and I've got a lot of respect to Eric Berg, but he is big on 10 cups of vegetables a day. And I was following that. So I've always eaten veg and salad anyway. But I had probably times that by 4. I was eating a lot more, and I was getting worse and worse. My stomach, and to me, and you're the doctor, I'm not, but to me, I've got 3 parts to my stomach, the actual stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine, top, middle, and bottom. And all 3 of them were in pain all of the time. So whilst the many of my symptoms were improving, hunger satiation, I wasn't hungry anymore. That was fantastic. The IBS had gone. The fatigue was certainly getting better, but my stomach was much, much worse. So I started going down the rabbit hole again. And I did some research about keto and indigestion and discovered Dr. Ken Berry, who I'd never seen before. And he is a proper MD. And he was talking about carnivore. And I thought, my first thought was, what? Obviously, I know what it is. I am a carnivore. I eat meat, but I eat veg and salad as plants as well. And he was saying, drop the plants, just eat the meat and animal products, not just meat, but fish, eggs, dairy is fine. And I thought, okay, I watched a lot of his videos. I also watched videos by Dr. Sten Ekberg, who's a sort of naturopathic type doctor. And he had a video up there about hypothyroidism. And he listed all of these symptoms. I think there were 11. And I sat there ticking off every single one. And yet my GP had run bloods and said all of my bloods were in normal ranges. So I decided I'm self-diagnosing here, and I'm convinced I've got a low thyroid. So I'm going to do what they're saying. And Dr. Ken Berry was saying that the fastest way to heal your body and heal your gut is carnivore. And you might treat it as an elimination diet, or you might stay on it for life. life, and many people are on it for life. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go. So that week I dropped all of the plants. My intention was to do a reset of my body for 30 days. That was the intention. Can I go 30 days just eating meat? And over those 30 days, well, within the first week, the indigestion improved by at least 50%. And in the second week, it had gone. All of my pain, top, middle, and bottom of my digestive tract had gone. And so at the end of the 30 days, I was feeling amazing. So I thought, I'm just going to keep going with it until my body says stop. I listened to my body intuitively. And it was about 6.5 weeks in that my body said, I would like some vegetables, please. And I added some in. And then I was able to test. Within a few hours, my stomach started playing up again. Right, it doesn't like that. Let's try this. And it did like that, but it didn't like this. So over the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks, after being full carnivore for 6 weeks, I trialed and tested different foods like an elimination diet, and discovered that the majority of the vegetables I eat, my body doesn't like. It doesn't like the veg. It seems to be okay on small amounts of salad, but it as like lettuce and some of the basic small amounts of salad, but very few vegetables does my stomach like. It seemed to be okay with asparagus, but any of the cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli, the cauliflower, any kind of cabbage, oh no, 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 no. My and garlic and onions, absolute agony. I can't digest them. So it doesn't matter what people say, oh, these are really good for you. If you can't digest them, then don't eat them. But this is where the head gets the thoughts, the belief systems get in the way, because, I'm nearly 60 years old. I'm 60 in 6 months. I've spent my whole life being trained, eat your veg. Eat your veg, you must eat your veg. I was watching your podcast from last week, episode 23. I really enjoyed that episode. It was wonderful. But there was one particular statement that you said that really resonated for me. And that's the way that as parents, we train our children to eat vegetables. And certainly it was the way for me as a child. I remember my parents saying, eat your veg and eat your meat. And that was the priority. And I hated veg. If I didn't smother it with gravy or ketchup or something, I didn't want it. And I remember baked beans particularly being the staple of the British diet, the Heinz baked beans. I was always really ill after those. And, my mum would say, but they're full of protein and they're really good for you. You must eat your beans. And I was always sick. And I hated cauliflower and broccoli and all of those things. But we are trained from a very young age. And it really resonated for me when you were saying about that, and you were saying that we children instinctively know what they want, and you give them veg and they don't want it, and we train them to want it, but what they do want is fruit. And that was the bit, it really kind of, every part of me went, oh, that's so right, that is so true. I really enjoyed fruit as a child, but I did not enjoy veg. So it was a real takeaway for me for that after I'd gone carnivore, I tried to start bringing back in vegetables. Most of them made me sick. So I do continue to eat some vegetables, but in very small quantities and only the ones that my body says okay. But the reason your episode 23 touched me like that, it resonated for me, was that keto says no fruit. And you mustn't have fruit other than the odd bit of berries. You can have some berries. So I've not had fruit basically for 3 years nearly now. And when I was watching that episode 23, my body said, I would really like some fruit. Can I have some fruit, please? And I thought, oh, how interesting. Okay. So maybe instead of doing predominantly carnivore with the odd bit of veg, that I do carnivore with the odd bit of fruit. And that's something that I'm going to trial going forward now, because since September 2020, I've continued this way of eating, but I tend to go 4 or 5 days with pure carnivore. I just eat animal products, and I'm feeling great. And then I'll add in a little bit of salad and the odd veg. And then my body, after a couple of days, says, I don't want that now. I just want the meat, please. Thank you very much. So I just listen to my body intuitively. So it felt right when I watched that podcast to say, instead of just adding in a bit of veg, drop the veg, add in a bit of fruit. So that's the way I'm going to move forward. But for me now that all the thyroid symptoms have gone from using predominantly, I would say that I'm 80% carnivore and 20% ketovore. So, the odd bit of fruit, well, not fruit, the veg salad, but I definitely feel better when I'm just carnivore and the energy is better. And the way that my symptoms, the final bits, I think I had about 23 different symptoms, and half of them had gone on keto, and the other half went on carnivore. And the few things that really stand out to me is 3 months into this, all the skin tags that I had, and I had quite a few. I had about 10 or 12 skin tags on my neck, on the side of my neck, lots on the back of my neck, rashes on my skin. They all went. The skin tags actually fell off. There was little bits of blood on my pillow in the morning. I'd wake up and I didn't see the skin tags, but I thought, why is there blood on my pillow? And I've had lots of ear infections in the past, and I thought, have I got an ear infection again where I'm bleeding onto the pillow? My ears were fine, and I felt my neck, and the skin tags had gone. And I think I had about 10, and there was 2 or 3 falling off every night over about a week, and they just completely went. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I did some research then to say about skin tags. There was nothing linked to keto about skin tags, but when I did some research on the carnivore, there were many, many people in the carnivore community saying that the skin tags had gone. So it's my belief now that skin tags are caused by carbs, and you take the carbs away, that they will come off. I don't know if they would have come off long term if I just stayed keto, or whether it was carnivore that was the final push, but it certainly made a difference. Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because we know there's good evidence that skin tags really are predominantly caused by or contributed to at least by insulin resistance. So carbs can definitely be a big factor there. We know, and we see this a lot with the medical profession. The end stage insulin resistance is type 2 diabetes, and we tell people, well, skin tags can be from diabetes, but then we don't tell people, well, actually, what comes before diabetes can also cause you the same problems, maybe just to a lesser extent. And we see this, I saw this with a patient earlier today, HbA1c of 5.9, they're getting carpal tunnel type symptoms, but they haven't got carpal tunnel syndrome. But they've got those symptoms, and it's because of the nerve damage starting with the insulin resistance and the borderline, almost borderline diabetes. If they were in America, they would have pre-diabetes.
Yeah.
But we tell people it can happen with diabetes. We don't tell people it can happen before then. But yeah, interestingly, with keto, I've never heard anyone saying that their skin tags fell off. But with carnivore, yes, this is a common thing that people report, skin tags suddenly just falling off them.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. In medicine, we tell people these things can't happen. Skin tags, you must remove them surgically or with cryo or something, or just leave them. But and just falling off is just incredible.
I remember by the time I was 40, I had lots of skin tags around the age of 40. And at the time in the UK, that was around about 2022, something like that, my GP removed them in the surgery. And they were cauterized off. And there was again about eight or nine then when I was 40, but they came back over the next 5 to 10 years. But when I went carnivore, they went.
Just fell off. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
They just fell off.
So yeah, I mean, that was a very long introduction, but a very good introduction. Thank you for your health journey. No, it's quite okay. A lot to unpack there, a lot of things I want to talk about. But yeah, you mentioned, of course, what I mentioned in the episode with James, who was vegan turned carnivore now. That yeah, I think it's telling with our kids where you have to force them to eat vegetables, and no child really, I mean, maybe 1% of children perhaps want to eat vegetables, and yet the assumption is just, well, you're just naughty. Just do what's good for you, rather than saying, well, why don't they want to eat the vegetables, but why are they happy to chew on? You give that kid a ribeye, they'll just chew on it all day long. You give them fruit, they go to town on it. But you give them those chemical pouches, they're from the shops, you give them the veg, etc. It'll hit the other side of the wall. It'll hit the other side of the room on the wall. What animal in the wild, has to be forced to eat the things it's meant to eat? You don't see deers, kind of telling baby deers, forcing them to go and eat the leaves. You don't see cows forcing their calves to go and eat the grass. No, they just know to eat it because it tastes right. Vegetables don't taste right for kids, so they don't want to eat it. Maybe they're just more in tune
Yeah.
with what they should be eating. They haven't been kind of convinced that what tastes bad is actually good. So they're just going on pure intuition. Maybe we should be listening to our kids more.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the way that we're programmed, not just on what to eat, but things like clear your plate. You know, as a hypnotherapist, when I had a lot of people coming to me for weight loss, and everybody had the same sort of two or three basic beliefs that this is the stuff you should eat, this is the stuff you shouldn't eat, and don't waste food, and you must clear your plate. And it's very, very rude to leave food on your plate. And we teach our children this. If you go to a friend's house for tea, don't be fussy eater, eat everything on your plate and say thank you nicely. And I would be helping people to unlearn that and say, when your stomach says, I've had enough, stop. And I would use the example of, I want you to imagine a toddler in a high chair at, say, 9 months to 1.5 years. They're sitting in a high chair. Mum or dad is going to feed them. And when you're a baby, mum or dad is God. You know, they are your protectors. You would die without them. So you heavily influenced by keep them happy. And they bring the spoon towards you, doing the aeroplane noise, you know, just one more spoon, just one more bit. And the baby is turning its head away. It's pushing the spoon away, it's turning the head away. And mum and dad are saying, just one more, finish what's in the bowl, finish what's on the plate. And so I'm teaching people to say, when your stomach says stop, listen to it and put the food away. If it's something that can keep, put it in the fridge for later or tomorrow. If it's not, be all right with throwing it in the bin. Be allowed to throw it in the bin. And I think in Europe it's very much stronger than perhaps than in other countries. This finish everything on your plate. My parents were born and they lived as children in the war, and then after the war there was 10 years of rationing. So this was very ingrained in them that food is a precious, limited commodity and you must value it and you mustn't waste it. So for my parents' generations who are in their 80s now, they wouldn't. It kills them with guilt to leave anything on their plate. And it's the way that they trained me and my generation in our 50s and 60s. We've had this as well. So I've been helping people to unlearn that behavior. And when you go carnivore or keto 4, you learn that your stomach says, when I'm hungry, when I'm full, and those triggers are actually reset back to normal. I might go 24 hours. I did a lot of OMAD, one meal a day when I was doing this, but then maybe 2 or 3 days later my body says I want 2 meals today, and okay, today we have two. And I stopped calling it sort of breakfast, lunch and dinner, and I would just say meal one, meal two. I haven't had breakfast for a long time. I never liked breakfast anyway. Before I was keto, I would like to eat about 10 in the morning. But after I went keto and carnivore, I was regularly eating 2 or 3 in the afternoon. That was my first meal of the day. And often that would be all I'd want all day. And then the next day I might have 2 meals, one at 2 or maybe one at 6. But I try not to eat after 7 because my digestion does not want a full belly when I go to bed around half 10, 11 o'clock. And I definitely sleep better when my stomach is not trying to process foods that it doesn't want. But if I eat just carnivore, I have got a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting there. I want to, I mean, intuitive eating is incredibly important. And it is something that we teach our kids not to do. You know, we teach our kids out of intuitive eating and from a very early age, exactly as you said, which is, really it's kind of, we go back to things like breastfeeding. And I know not everybody breastfeeds, not everybody can breastfeed, I know. Nobody should feel guilty if they're not breastfeeding. But, breastfeeding is a very on-demand thing. And, when babies are done, they come off and that's fine. Nobody tries to force it on them anymore. But then when they're weaning, then onto solids and so forth, it's no, you must finish the whole thing. I made this. I spent a lot of time and, and so on. And it just teaches them to just overeat,
It
and we're
does.
not listening to
Yeah.
those cues. As you said, that the babies are turning their heads saying, no, thank you, I don't want it.
Yeah.
And yet we're just forcing it on them. And it just really can create disordered eating. And that can be very hard to undo. And
Absolutely.
I don't know if it is a British thing. I mean, I'm British and my parents, exactly the same thing. You must finish your plate, you must eat the whole thing. You cannot have more of anything until you finish everything.
Yes.
No dessert until you finish everything, and so on. Regardless of how much I've cooked, you have to finish the whole thing because we can't possibly waste anything. I'm sure it's the same in other places, but Britain, maybe it is worse. And it is a post-war thing with rationing, and you can understand the rationale there.
Yeah.
Food waste is a big problem, of course, but over time, people will learn to cook less. They'll know how much they want to eat, and
Yes.
and so on. But also, one of the benefits with carnivore is 99% of the food you can just put back in the fridge
Yes.
and
Yeah.
eat, and eat
Absolutely.
later. I do that with like my ribeyes. I just put them back in the fridge if I'm not hungry, and I'll just eat on them, cold later. And actually, cold ribeyes are pretty nice anyway. So I want to go back a little bit if I can, Julie, because obviously you've had your own health journey, and I want to come back to that a little bit later. But you actually made the journey, the switch from kind of business and corporate world into, as you said, the more spiritual, more holistic side of things. But that sounded like that was before your health journey. What made you kind of go down that route then?
Well, I think many people are living a life they don't particularly want to live, and we just get caught up in the corporate hamster wheel, or the situation that we're in, and we don't consider: am I happy? Does this work for me? Does it fit me? Am I a round peg in a square hole? And many, many people are living that life, and I was one of them. I'd moved into my career was in homelessness and advice and support with vulnerable groups of people. And I'd gone to college, and I'd done 4 years in college to get my qualifications in that, and I'd sort of built that. But I became more and more stressed and tired and exhausted and unhappy. Um, and I got to the point where many of us have this trigger point, what you might call either a breakdown moment. I call it a breakthrough moment. For me, my youngest child, I have 3 children, they're all adults now, but my youngest child at the time was 2. And I'd go to work at 7 in the morning and drop her off at nursery. And I'd finish work somewhere between 5 and 6 and then go and pick her up. And she would go to bed 7:30. So I'd be lucky to have 40 minutes with her. And in that 40 minutes, it was sort of rush to get as much quality in that time as you can. And because I was divorced from her dad, we then had the weekends where we shared her. So he'd have her one weekend, I'd have her the other weekend. So the time that I had with my child was ridiculously low. It was less than 3 hours in the week and every other weekend. So consequently, she didn't really know me. And my teenage boys, because I'd had children 10 years before and 15 years before, they didn't really know me either. It'd all been about, I'm a single mom and I've got to provide for my family, and this is what I've got to do. And so one day I went to pick her up from the nursery. I was tired, I was stressed. I always was, always exhausted, always trying to do everything. And I arrived just in time. They shut at 7. I got there like 3 minutes to 7. And the owner came to the door with my sort of 2-year-old child attached to her hip. And I reached out my arms to her. Come on, Charlotte, come to mummy. And she turned her head away, buried it in the woman's shoulder and said, no. And I was just, oh, and for any parent, not just a mother, but fathers too, when your child prefers to stay with a childminder to the nursery nurse than to come to their own parent, my heart sank. Every part of me sank, and I felt the tears well up, and I was exhausted and tired. And here's my baby, my last child, and she was a gift, she was a surprise, and she was my joy. And she doesn't want to come to me. I literally had to pull her, kicking and screaming, into my own arms and carry her to the car with her shouting, no, 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 no. And I got home, we had the bath, we had story time, she went to bed. And then I sat in the chair and I meditated, which is what I do. I connect with my higher self, my internal self, I connect with the universe. And I say, show me what to do. Please show me what to do. And the answer that came through so strongly was, let it go. Let it all go. And I was like, you're kidding me, and we will show you, we will guide you. There's another life for you, a life that is more aligned with you and who you are. And it was so strong, I had to trust it. I'd been talking to spirits since I was 7 years old. It was very much a part of my life. It was a part of who I was. I'd been healing and teaching and telling people about this stuff since, it was very much who I was. And what I was getting was, you are meant to be, a spiritual teacher. Let this corporate stuff go. Just trust. So I went to work the next day and I quit without a job to go to. And that's hairy scary when you're a single parent. It was hairy scary, but this is where, and I'm not suggesting that other people do this, but what I do encourage people to do is to follow their path. Yes, line up another job or another thing before you go. Obviously, I needed to restructure my finances. I went from a decent salary. I mean, I wasn't six figures, but back in 2020, it was good money I was on, to say, well, what am I going to do now? So I restructured everything. I gave up my home. Well, gave up. I had my own home, and I sold that. And I went and rented a small house that was much cheaper, in an area in Cornwall. I was living in Gloucester at the time in England, and I moved to Cornwall. And at the time, it was much cheaper. It's not now, but it was then. And I just decided that what price quality of life, that I want my child to know me. I want to be a parent to my children. And what kind of example am I setting them when it's all about work, 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 work? And where's your happiness? Where's your balance? Where's this and that? So that's when I moved to Cornwall. I retrained as a hypnotherapist. I got myself a little part-time job, still in housing, but when I left, I was a director, and I went and just got a job as an officer. And they were saying to me, why do you want to do this officer part-time 16 hours a week job with your experience? I'd built this career over 15, 17 years. And I said, because that's not what I want anymore. And I'm doing this while I'm training as a hypnotherapist. There are many hypnotherapy so-called qualifications that are weekend courses, which crack me up. Mine was an 18-month diploma, and quite intensive, and lots of work around addictions of the mind and the programming of the mind. And so whilst I was completing my training, I continued to work in housing, but part-time, 16 hours a week. Take my daughter to school, nursery school, at a reasonable time, like 9 o'clock or on the 7 o'clock. And then I'd got to work for 4 hours, pick her up, bring her home, have the afternoons with her, bringing my life into balance. So we have this belief that we can't change anything, that we're trapped in this life that we've created. I certainly had that belief for more than 10 years. And so as I moved through the next 20 years, and the resulting most recent book, From Hoping to Having, is showing you how you can change your life. You're never trapped, but it does mean a reprioritizing, and it does mean a giving yourself permission to put your own needs, wants, and desires into the forefront. I had programs within me, a belief system that was, don't expect to be happy in your job. There's the people who have a job and they're happy, and the artists, the singers. You're going to be a starving artist. You're going to be a poverty-ridden singer, because to do anything you love will mean that you won't earn money from it. So that was certainly my belief. And so when I became a hypnotherapist, and I also opened up spiritual classes, development classes, meditation courses, workshops, teachings, things like that. I had a belief along that I'm never going to get rich from this, because I'm doing what I love, and you don't get rich doing what you love. And over the last few years, I've retrained myself since I discovered the law of attraction, which was quite new for me, when the Secret came out. But then I'd been reading books by Neville Goddard and various other, so not necessarily spiritual people, but business people, saying you don't have to starve to do what you love. You absolutely don't. If you believe that you can earn well from doing what you love, you create that reality. So my latest book is helping people to see that. And actually, the introduction is my story about that nursery breakthrough moment. And actually, I've never been happier. I earn good money. My world has been great. And, I teach people. A teacher's not necessarily facilitate, open their eyes, educate, inform that there is another world, another option.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's a really good story, and one that we certainly do hear. People just, stuck in these jobs that they hate. Really just, wake up in the morning, put the kids in the car, drop them off at daycare, go to work, come back, pick them up, go to bed. Not really spending any time with their kids. They don't enjoy it. They're not happy, but they can't see a way out.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I do, with my patients in day-to-day work, honestly, it's not even being a doctor, it's being a life coach sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just talking to people and just saying, look, it's okay to maybe just earn a bit less, and it's okay to spend more time with your family, and sometimes you just got to work out what's right for you, but put a plan in place. Don't just quit your job. I mean, that's very brave. I usually recommend they have some sort of backup option, but
I do as well. I do with my clients.
Find something that, of course, makes you happy. And I think one thing that we see nowadays, especially, I mean, certainly previously, I mean, I remember thinking the same thing. You can't be rich and happy, and
Yeah.
you can't be happy and and rich. Basically, it's one or the other. But I think nowadays, I mean, it's very different. And YouTube and podcasting and so on is, I think, a good example of this. And I actually talk to some of my patients about it and say, hey, look, if you've got a passion, you've got something you like doing, get out there. Get on YouTube. Like, just make videos. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you make a fool of yourself, no one's really watching anyway when you're starting out. Who cares? And
Yeah.
actually, you may just make it, and you may just, actually enjoy what you're doing. You get to talk to people like we're doing now.
Yeah.
And it's just good fun, and then you can learn while you're doing it, and and so on. So I think nowadays definitely everyone's got the option for just putting themselves out there, making a change, but it's hard for people. It's scary.
It is scary. And what we find generally, and this is sort of all through the kind of life coaching world, is that how uncomfortable has your life got to get for you to make the changes? And we have to, because we don't like change, we find it uncomfortable, we find it painful. So you're balancing up the pain of your current existence versus the pain of the change. And we find generally that people won't make those changes until the current life is absolute agony. They will do everything they can to avoid it. And then once that agony point is reached, then it starts to shift over to, it's less painful to make the changes than it is to continue to live the life that you're living. And it's, this is what I'm sort of trying to emphasize in my book. It doesn't have to be that painful. It truly doesn't. It's about your thinking, and not just the thoughts, but your actions need to back up those thoughts. But we have so many different blocks, belief systems that stop us from doing that. And that's something that, I think, back in, I think, probably 2021, I created a series of products on my website called Unlock Your Block to ... Unlock your block to a job, or to love, or to health, or to wealth, or whatever. And I'm listing all of the blocks that we have in each of these areas, and then showing you how to unblock them so that you can move yourself forward, because the subconscious is so incredibly powerful. And if you believe you can't, then guess what? You're right. If you believe you can, guess what? You're right. It's really about those belief systems. And we have so many beliefs around health that are wrong. We have beliefs around money and wealth that are wrong. Like we just said, there's a belief that says you can't be rich and happy. And then many people have beliefs that rich people are horrible, greedy, nasty people. I don't want to be one of those people, and therefore that keeps the wealth away from me. And these very strong ingrained beliefs around health, like the doctor will fix you. Go see the doctor will fix you. And the doctor's a human being, and they have limited time, 5 to 10 minutes per patient. And they don't know how you live your life, what you eat, how you live, if you're stressed out of your brains, if you live a very sedentary life with no movement. And, when I did the health chapter in the book, I covered 3 areas. because it isn't a book about health. It's a book about empowerment, empowering you into your best life. And I cover in the first part all the different areas of power: spiritual power, personal power. There's so many different parts. Until we step into our power, then in terms of I deserve it, I'm allowed it, I can have it. And then the second part, which is reset, that's the let's change this thinking. And then the third part, receive. Now you can step into the life you actually want and that you can have it. But this chapter on health was just 3 areas. I talk about your diet, what you eat, and I talk about the stress levels. My brain's just gone blank. What was the third area? Movement, motion, because many of us live sedentary lives. And I describe the health a little bit like a car. I said, your body is your vehicle to get you through life. And if your car was breaking down, you wouldn't be able to get very far. And if you park your car up for months on end and then get in it and expect it to go well, you'll find that it won't, because the car has many bits of different fluids that have got stagnant and stuck, and the fluid isn't flowing. And a car needs water to stop it overheating, and it needs oil to keep all those moving parts going, and it needs fuel, the right fuel. And I describe about, if you've ever tried to put diesel in a petrol engine or petrol in a diesel engine, you'll very quickly find it doesn't go. And the engine will seize, and we need a mechanic to flush it out. And I use these analogies to say your body's exactly the same. So, we live this sedentary life where many of us sit behind computers all day. And then we go from the computer desk to the couch and we're not moving. So like everything's seizing up, and the fuel, we're putting the wrong fuel in our body. And so just like the car engine of putting diesel in petrol, everything starts to go katonk. And, we don't take the car to a mechanic. We take the body to the doctor and say, fix me, give me a pill, but then continue the life exactly the way you've been living it. So, kind of explain all of this of how to, and give people suggestions. And it's not, you're doing it all wrong, you've got to correct it. It's pure suggestions that this may help your health, this may help your mental health and your stress levels, and this may help you feel better. And I say in that, and I always say to other people, you do you, I do me. I can tell you what worked for me, and I can tell you what's worked for others. But there's no way I'm going to say to you, you have to do this, or you must do this, or you shouldn't do it. And that's one of the things that I have found with the carnivore as a spiritual person, a spiritual motivator, a spiritual teacher. Many people in my community are vegans and vegetarians. And actually, when our podcast that we did for my channel went live on Sunday, I lost 100 subscribers overnight. And that's not unusual. That happened before in 2020 when I put the videos up. As when I went keto carnivore, I recorded, I think there was about 6 videos of my journey, and there's photographs of me before and after. And it's not just that I look fat, I look really unhealthy, because I was, and then I look healthy when it's finished. But I put these videos up about it, and I lost hundreds and hundreds of subscribers saying, you're a spiritual person, how can you kill and eat those animals? I'm disgusted, I'm unsubscribing. And I'm okay with that. But this judgment that we have, which is a little ironic with the spiritual community, which is all about remove the judgment, allow people to do them and allow people to be themselves. But I understand that those are some people's attitudes. And I just kind of think, okay, then bye-bye. And I delete the negative comments because I choose not to have them all over my channel. But I understand some people don't understand it, don't accept it, and judge it very, very harshly. So
yeah, I mean, it's a shame, isn't it, when people can't accept that you're actually improving your life and you're getting healthy and so on. But well, I hope I didn't lose you too many subscribers.
No, it's my choice. I when I decided I'm going to do a couple of podcasts, and the
brave.
podcasts that I do also go on my YouTube channel, and I know that there will be people in my community, on my tribe, my followers, that kind of say, "Oh, I didn't know that about you. I'm off," and that's okay. It's allowed. It's okay. So I knew that would happen, and I choose to do that because there's also many people that have commented, I was just like you. I was fine until the menopause, and then just like you, it all went downhill. And I'm now keto or carnivore or ketovore, and my health is back. And so,
Yeah, I mean, we do see that certainly things can be perfectly fine and then, fall off a cliff. Of course, you referenced my podcast episode with James, his amazing story of vegetarian turned vegan turned carnivore. And he, exactly the same. He was fine for a long time and then just, he wasn't
Yeah,
basically. And animal
yeah,
based nutrition was his savior there.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on there, of course, people's beliefs, and I think this is really important. And you did mention earlier, of course, something along the lines of, people shouldn't be needing to kind of go to the doctor to be told, kind of what to do and so forth. And I was thinking, yeah, like I've often said on this podcast and to my friends and family and patients, if I'm out of a job, I'm happy because I mean I'll find something else to do. I'll just play with my kids or something, be a stay-at-home dad. But I'm happy because that means everyone's cured and there's no sick people anymore, and that would make me extremely happy. But we'll probably never get to that point. But it's sad. I was seeing a patient today, and I realized that we kind of, as patients, we externalize our control so much. We give up this control to the doctors. We disempower ourselves as patients, and as doctors we disempower our patients, the public, by telling them, well, you need this thing that only I can give you. And I don't think doctors do it intentionally,
No.
but it's just the system, the way that the system's grown up for hundreds of years, certainly in the last couple of decades anyway. And it's disempowered and disenfranchised people to be in charge of their own health. And I think a large part of it is this kind of, well, there's always a pill.
I
And
think
I
so
don't
many
really have
things.
to, yeah, take control. And because, I saw a patient earlier and they had impaired glucose tolerance, and that was 2 years ago. And they've probably got diabetes now, but they just never kind of really came back because the doctor just didn't stress to them enough the importance. And the patient's probably just thinking, well, the doctor says it's all right,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're so disenfranchised, they're so disempowered to make their own decisions and say, no, this is actually not okay because I don't want just the pill down the line. I actually want, to be healthy. So I think a large part, you said, obviously, your book, you did a small part of it on health. I mean, I would actually perhaps disagree. I haven't read your book, but maybe I should read it. It sounds very good. But I mean, I think everything that you're talking about, it's all health.
it
It's
is.
absolutely
Yeah,
all health, and it's all
yeah.
very, very relevant to health.
I did the health chapter, and I remember saying in the health chapter, I'm doing this after I've done the chapters on boundaries, commitments, responsibilities, because until those things are in place, you will be stressed out of your brains and you will be eating the wrong food to comfort eat. You will be, because most of these issues are created from a life that's out of balance, a life that's disempowered, where you feel helpless and trapped and stuck. I've committed to that and I must do that. And this need for approval that we have, and we all have it. And I wrote all those, it's in the reset section. I wrote those sections first and then did the health one almost last. It's like when you fix those other things, then you can come to it. I remember as a hypnotherapist, many people would come to me because of issues with over consumption of alcohol or smoking, or the food, sugars and things like that. And in the first 2 or 3 sessions I wouldn't even touch on those actual topics. I remember one chap saying to me, I came here because I'm drinking too much, and we're on our third session and we haven't actually discussed alcohol. And I said, no, because alcohol is your crutch. And if your leg was broken, I would not take away your crutch. That's just cruel. You are drinking because your life is out of balance. And so if we fix the life that's out of balance, 9 times out of 10, we find that the drinking fixes itself, because it's not the cause, it's the symptom. I want to look at the cause, and we'll do some work on the cause. And then if there's still an issue with alcohol at the end of it, then we'll deal with the alcohol. So, and that's absolutely accurate, and in my experience. And I think, I'm not suggesting for a moment that everybody with health problems, it's down to their lifestyle or diet. Obviously, there are illnesses, there are illnesses. What I am saying is that I believe there is a lot of people whose health issues are down to lifestyle, are down to life choices, and are down to choices of what they eat and drink. And that no pill is going to fix that. You're just, it's been medicalized. When I was in in uni and I did my dissertation for my degree, I did it on medicalization. You go to the doctors, I'm depressed, and they give you a pill. And it's saying, well, are you depressed because you hate your job? Are you depressed because you're living in a really toxic relationship? And actually, if you changed your job and got divorced, you'd be right as rain. Many of us are depressed because we feel helpless and hopeless and trapped and we don't know how to fix it. So we've medicalized it when actually it's a life issue, not a health issue.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, 90 probably percent of what I see as a GP is, yeah, really life issues, and not even lifestyle issues, just life issues.
Yeah,
And it's just really grinding people down and they don't know how to
yeah,
escape. And so they turn to then things like alcohol, the stress goes up, their eating goes up, they turn to sugary addictive foods and so on, because at least it's something either they can control or it's something that makes them at least feel good, even temporarily. They'll just take it, basically. And I have a similar approach to yourself, actually. And this is why I was keen to talk to you, because I know you're coming in from it from a different angle, but I think we're both, really trying to get the same result and really approach it in a similar way, even though it's a different angle, different perspective. I say the same thing with alcohol. I say to people, well, look, if you come in blind drunk, like fine, there's an immediate problem, but
yeah,
otherwise, okay, you're drinking 50, 60, 70 units a week. That's excessive. We need to fix that. But we don't need to fix it immediately, right now. Why are you drinking this much?
the
The
why is always
why
why.
is this so important.
Yeah,
And that, I think, is something that we miss
yeah,
so often in medicine, especially. And it's always this disease treatment. And there's no kind of, there's just this disconnect of, but
yeah,
why do we have this disease? Why do we have this problem in the first place?
yeah,
Address the root cause, and then the downstream effects will most likely
yeah.
improve, as
Like
you
when I
said. So,
suddenly
yeah.
started wanting sugar, I'd never wanted sugar before. My
Mm,
first question is why? Why do I
yeah.
suddenly have a sweet tooth?
Mm,
And what has changed in the last 6 months that this has happened? So I questioned, I interrogate myself, but in a very gentle, compassionate way, but trying to be very truthful and vulnerable. Why am I suddenly wanting desserts when I've never wanted them before? What has changed since that happened? So I question myself, and the answer is your period stopped, which means you've got a hormonal change. So, what can I do to fix that? Is there anything? And I, just like everybody else, went into the, oh, well, it is the way it is. I'm getting older. Menopause is one of those things. You're going to get hot flushes. You're going to have these hormonal changes. Nothing you can do about it. It'll pass. And I lived like that for a little while. And then I thought, hang on a minute, what would I say to a client? I need to bring that back to myself. Why is this happening? So, yeah, that's sort of what led me down the keto rabbit hole and the carnivore rabbit hole.
mm.
Look at the why. So,
Yeah.
yeah, the why is so important.
How do you find kind of ketovore, carnivore now, with kind of post menopause? Because I do see quite a lot of postmenopausal women as patients, and some of them are doing fantastically on carnivore. Others are maybe not doing quite so well. Now, I believe I know why, and I can touch on that. But I'm wondering how you're going, whether you've had any issues, because there's probably people out there thinking, well, I'm in the same position, but should I do it? Are there going to be issues, and so on?
Well, I think there were so many gains that I did not want to come away from it. So, I mean, I hadn't had a decent night's sleep in 3 years because of the hot flushes, which completely went, absolutely completely went within a month of carnivore. Well, actually, a month of keto. They went within a month of keto. My hot flushes went within, I think, I mean, I'm going back nearly 3 years and trying to remember, but I think it was within the first 3 weeks that they stopped. It was like a switched off. The sugar craving switched off in 2 days. The hot flushes switched off within 2 or 3 weeks, and it continued to get better and better. And I thought, okay, we say the menopause is, purely down to hormones. But for me, I found, and I've heard other people say this too, as soon as you remove the carbs, the hot flushes go. I certainly had insulin resistance. I had non alcoholic fatty liver. I definitely had a low thyroid, all of which were fixed over the next 4 months. So I lived that way solidly for the next 2.5 years. I very rarely had carbs. Probably after about a year, I thought I can afford to have the odd bit of carbs if I want, some rice, some potato now and again if I want to. But I definitely found I felt really yucky fairly quickly. But after 2.5 years of sort of coming up to Christmas, the last Christmas in December, I just thought, Joe, I just need a break. I just need a break. I've done this. I've been really good for 2.5 years. My body is thanking me. I fat adapted. We're all good to go. And I'm going to have more carbs. So up until I would say the first 6 months, I was 100% clean, no carbs. And then the next year and a half, I would have carbs maybe once a week. So a small amount, but we're not talking stupid, still less than 50 grams of carbs a day. And then December and January, I decided I'm having a break. And allowed myself some chocolates this Christmas. I allowed myself some desserts. And oh my God, it is, I suppose what alcohol is to an alcoholic. The cravings were back. The overheating came back. The skin issues came back. The skin tags started coming back, all within 4 or 5 weeks. Because I put my body out of balance. And I'd heard and I believed and worked this way very many years, most of my life, the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time eat clean, and then you can allow yourself 20% of the time not to eat clean. Now, I was probably 95-5 for those 2.5 years, and then I allowed it to be 50-50. And that balance went out very, very quickly, very quickly. So after 6 weeks or so, the symptoms were back, the tiredness started coming back, and I went, no, 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 no. My body's saying, all right, you're taking the mick now. That's enough. Get back on. So I went back onto carnivore, full blown carnivore. For 3 weeks, and then I allowed myself some veg or salad, sort of maybe one day after 2 or 3 weeks. I have a little bit, but I'm back, kind of doing carnivore. My body's coming back into balance.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. I mean, I think certainly some of the people that I've seen that are struggling with menopause with carnivore, I don't think it's carnivore that they're struggling with. I think it's just menopause they're struggling with. But I think a big reason why some people struggle, I see some people, with like libidos just tanking and so on. People talk about it. Is I think it's to do with sex hormone binding globulin. Which is by the time this episode comes out, I'll have done my kind of, ribeye challenge video. But that I noticed that my SHBG had gone up actually just eating the ribeyes. And everyone on my YouTube channel is kind of trying to guess what my mysterious ingredient is that I was lacking on my ribeye only. And it was boron, which is really interesting.
What is boron?
Boron is a mineral in soil. We don't hear about it very much, otherwise known as borax or boric acid. You may know borax. And boron has some evidence that it can actually increase your hormone levels, your sex hormone levels, mainly testosterone, but I'm sure it can do the same as well with estrogen, progesterone, and so on, by reducing the sex hormone binding globulin, which takes out the active, kind of binds those sex hormones. And I noticed I was starting to crave food which was very rich or richer in boron, because I was craving liver, fruit, dairy. And I was thinking, what is the link here? What is going on? Why is my libido starting to go down a tiny bit? Why am I feeling tired now after 2 weeks of just ribeyes? I knew I was deficient in something, but what was I deficient in? And I worked out it was boron that may be the link. Went and took some boron tablets that I had in the house, and then the next day I felt absolutely perfect again.
Wow.
Which was amazing. I never would have thought of boron. And nobody on my channel has managed to guess it. They'll know by the time this one comes out. But yeah, I believe people out there, if they're struggling on carnivore, especially post-menopause, or if HRT is not working, get your doctor to check your sex hormone binding globulin. Because I saw a patient recently where it's literally off the charts. And HRT is just not working for her. Testosterone wasn't working. Normal HRT wasn't working. Carnivore's not working. And yeah, SHBG is just sky high. So everything that they're giving her, it's just basically kind of just being sucked out, and it's just not working. So if there's anyone out there that is struggling, menopause and carnivore, definitely get your SHBG checked by your doctor. A slight tangent there, but I want to bring it back a little bit, because you mentioned a few times that you decided on carnivore that you wanted to kind of go back into eating some vegetables. Was that because you felt you needed them, or because of this just kind of 60 or 59? Sorry, I don't want to call you 60 yet. Of kind of you must eat your veg, or was it something like fiber that you were worried about? Was it your doctor was telling
intuitive.
you? What was it?
Yeah, it wasn't intuitive. It was boredom. I was bored. That it is a limiting diet. It's that you just. I've been for 6 weeks. My diet was steak, sausages, bacon, eggs, some shellfish, and some fish. Um, Lots and lots of eggs. And, when you've had that day in, day out, every day, and some people see food as fuel and they've got no real interest in it. They just eat the food to give them the fuel. I like food. And it was 6 weeks on carnivore, and I was having my typical bacon, eggs, two sausages. And I looked at the plate and I thought, I would so love a tomato and some mushrooms to go with this, which is more of a traditional fry up. And I let that go for a couple of days, but the little head was saying, nagging me away. So I did I grilled a tomato and a couple of mushrooms, and I reacted very badly. And I thought that's really interesting. And then I thought, well, to be fair, I've had no plant life for 6 weeks, so I probably need to do it more gently. And then I watched some videos about how to reintroduce it, and they were saying probiotics, prebiotics, which I find make me really ill. I can't seem to tolerate them. But I realized that with the tomato, if I took the skin off and it was cooked, I could digest it. But if I ate tomatoes raw, I couldn't digest them. That the mushrooms, actually, the reason all the thrush has gone was because I'm not eating fungal stuff. If you've got fungal infections, why are you eating fungus? And it's kind of, my head said, well, that's logical. That makes sense. So, I found that I was okay with some salad. It was really about interest. I wanted a little bit more different textures in my mouth, different flavors in my mouth. So I allowed myself that for the first week or so. And then I found I didn't really want them, because I didn't feel actually they were doing anything. They weren't adding anything, other than a bit more color on the plate, and I always used to, as a hypnotherapist, try to train people on eat a rainbow diet, because you don't need to know all the different vitamins and minerals. Just know if it's a different color, it's got a different mineral or vitamin, then something else is a different color, including with your meats and your fish. You've got red meat and pink meat and white meat, and they contain different nutrients. And the same with the fish. You've got red salmon and pink salmon and white cod, and if it's different color, it's giving you something. So in order to get the range of vitamins and minerals, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nutritionist, but to me it makes absolute sense, and intuitively this is what I feel: eat lots of colors. And on carnivore for 6 weeks, it had been predominantly steak and pork and eggs, so there was a few colors there. But yeah, I wanted something yellow, like a bit of sweet corn, or some beetroot, or something green. And I do seem to be absolutely fine with beetroot. My body likes it, but only now and again. It kind of will say to me, let's have a bit of that now. So there's obviously something in it. My body's saying I need that. And I'll listen to it. But I have to be careful with vegetables. They don't like me. We're
Yeah, I mean,
not friends.
a lot of people struggle with vegetables. Interestingly, fruit, as you said, is generally seems to be okay. And I guess this comes back to intuitive eating. We were talking about kids, of course.
Yeah.
And you could argue that fruit is going to be probably less toxic, given that the majority of fruit, there are still toxic fruits like cassava melons and so on. But, the majority of fruit essentially kind of wants to be eaten. It's designed to be eaten for the most part. And so you can argue that's probably going to be less toxic anyway than vegetables, which by and large don't want to be eaten, because if they're eaten, they're dying. And the whole point of life is not to die, to reproduce and survive, not to get eaten by human beings. I'm wondering what like your doctor maybe in the UK has said about your diet and so on. Do they know that you're kind of doing this keto carnivore, and what's their opinion on it?
Oh, they don't like it. I know when I'd had a biopsy on my skin rashes that I'd had on and off for 13 years, because they first of all thought it was a fungal infection. It looked a little bit like ringworm on my upper arm, and the fungal cream didn't touch it. So then they thought it was an infection. So they tried antibiotic cream. Nothing worked. In the end, they did a biopsy, came back with, we know what it is, some long name, which I don't recall. And they said, no known cause, no known cure. They come and go. They're not contagious. Live with it. Within a month of being low carb, they're gone. and I'd had them on and off for 13 years. They'd completely gone. And lots of my other symptoms had gone. And I actually wrote to my doctor, I wrote to my GP, and I listed 23 symptoms, half of which I've been on various prescription medications for, and said, now gone, now gone, now gone, against each of these symptoms. And when I said about the skin rash, I said, no known cause, no known cure. There absolutely is a cause. It's called sugar and carbs. The cure is take away the sugar and carbs. Same with the fungal, the thrush, that had all gone. The same with all of the plaque on my teeth. I had lots of plaque. I go for a clean and polish every 3 months. And I had said to my dentist, why do I get so much plaque? And well, some people just have a lot of acid in their mouth and it just creates a lot more plaque. It's just one of those things. Just have more regular clean and polishes. When I went back the next time, she said, what have you been doing to your teeth? There's hardly any plaque, you know. So yeah, there are. But I was in the doctor's for something recently, nothing serious, to do with my ears, and they did a blood test and said, oh, and looked all concerned. Not a blood test, a urine. Can I have a urine sample? And I gave her a urine sample, and it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And she put it under the stick, and she said, "Oh, you what?" And I said, "What? What's the matter?" And she said, have you eaten today? And I said, no, it's 11 o'clock. I don't eat until the afternoon generally. And she said, you're in ketosis. I said, oh, it's because I live a ketosis life. You know, I live the keto way. And she sort of went, oh. And then more recently, I joined a gym, and which I'm not normally somebody who does a gym, but I joined a gym and I had a sort of an assessment and then a program created for me. And they said, you know, make sure you eat plenty of carbs before you come into the gym. And these are, you know, this is the fitness people who do your program. And I said, I don't eat carbs. And they said, well, you can't work out without carbs. And I said, absolutely, you can. I had 3 different people in the gym that work there, you know, that are part of, they'll, you know, assess you, show you how to use the equipment, all absolutely horrified that I don't eat carbs. They were disgusted. And my mother's the worst one. She's 85, to be fair. And she is your typical standard diet. She eats, I worked out, she eats 9 times a day. 9 times a day. She eats every 2 hours, and every single meal includes carbs and gluten and wheat. And my God, the gas that woman has is horrific. But hey-ho, you know. But that's her life. That's her world. She's not overweight. She's actually pretty strong for 85. And, you know, she gives me absolute hell that I don't eat carbs. And yeah, I said to her, Mum, the thing is, you know, you're okay with that. It works for you. It doesn't work for me. And we need to understand that my stomach is different to your stomach. And we haven't been taught that individuality. We've been taught everybody should eat this and everybody should not eat that. Well, we need to realize that we've got different digestive systems, different enzymes, different levels, different this and that. And what works for you doesn't necessarily work for me. And I think I had my first trouble with my stomach when I was pregnant at 18 on my first child. And I had terrible constipation. And then as a result of that and the pregnancy, terrible hemorrhoids. And the more I had suffered, the more they gave me fiber. And the worse I got, and the more they gave me fiber, and the worse I got. Because back then in 81, that it was all evidence was there that fiber helps constipation. And I'm sure it did for the people that they tested. And so they therefore came up with this conclusion that everybody will benefit from fiber. And it's not true. When I feel into it, I kind of feel that maybe 80% of people benefit from fiber. I fall into the 20% who don't, because that part of my digestion had continued. I had an operation when I was 27 for hemorrhoids. They still came back. I've always struggled with it. But interestingly, within 3 months of carnivore, it had gone.
Yeah. It's
And
amazing, isn't it? And we
yeah,
tell everyone that fiber is so important. And
yeah.
actually, there's good studies. I know Dr. Barkay, Professor Barkay, talks about fiber a lot on his channel. If you've seen him, I'm sure you probably have.
I
And
haven't seen that one
oh no,
now.
it's very good. And he talks about these studies with idiopathic constipation, so we don't really know what the cause was, and these big studies. And basically, the only thing that made it better was taking out the fiber.
Yeah.
Fiber made it worse. The more
Yeah.
fiber they gave them, the more constipated they got. And I've spoken before on this channel about my analogy between a bowl of Wheat Bix or Weetabix if you're in England, and butter. And Wheat Bix is your fiber, and butter is your fat in the analogy. And the air, which is basically what your colon's doing, is just drying out the fiber, drying out the Wheat Bix, and it just goes rock hard.
Yeah.
And you just need to keep piling more and more and more Wheat Bix in, so it just
Yeah.
overflows
Yeah.
and pushes it out, pushes it out of your bottom. Whereas the fat just stays soft, at body temperature, and it just stays soft, and it's just small, easy to go, to the toilet. And of course, we talk about fiber. I know you want to talk a little bit about that, and it's broken down into butyrate, which is very helpful for the colonocytes, the enterocytes, the colon cells. But then when we're in ketosis, we're producing, BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate, in absolute bucket loads, way more than we're getting from digesting fiber. So again, there isn't really that much evidence that fiber is actually good for us. And in fact, there is evidence it can cause things like diverticulosis, which I know some people refer to as bowel failure. These outpouchings of the bowel wall. But we've just normalized this thing. Oh, it just happens as you get older.
Yeah.
But we don't normalize heart failure. Oh, it's just your heart's just getting bigger and getting weak. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's just something that happens as you get older. Go and have a higher blood pressure because that's fine. Yet we've normalized fiber, even though it causes this condition, which we know can put people in hospital. They can get infected. They can get perforations. We know these things can happen. Yet we've just normalized, this thing that says, yeah, we need to eat fiber. But often, I mean, like yourself, I mean, I've got a history of IBS there, never officially diagnosed, but very clearly had IBS. And I've done videos on this already before. And mine's just literally one day disappeared.
Yeah.
Every patient I've put onto carnivore that I've spoken about it, they've wanted to go on it, disappeared. IBS gone almost instantly. And they just come back in and say, my God, like, is this what it's like? Like not needing the toilet 24/7? Like it's just a miracle cure for them. It really is. I'm interested. I guess maybe your rash was maybe something like granuloma annulare. Maybe I don't know what it was exactly, but
I
you can't
can't
remember what it
recall
was.
the
No,
name,
no,
but
that's fine.
it's
Yeah,
only upper body. It would come up to the upper
yeah.
arms and the upper chest, and it would just come into. In fact, I've got one back here that started coming from that 6 weeks of having the sugar. It's now fading away
Yeah.
again. It's going
Okay,
away,
interesting.
but it's clearly a reaction.
Yeah,
That
maybe something like Grover's disease or something. I mean, who knows? But I won't ask you to take your clothes off to diagnose it. Don't worry. But yeah, I mean, isn't that interesting that then obviously we say people there's no cure for these things, yet you obviously found a cure. What did your doctor say to that then? This letter that you sent him with or sent her with this 23 kind of
I had no
things on.
acknowledgement and no reply
It
at
probably went
all.
straight in the shredder.
And I didn't go back to the doctor for 2 years. And I used to
Yeah.
be in the doctor quite regularly and repeat prescriptions. One of the strongest criticisms I put in that letter, and again, not judging the doctor didn't know, but I said, you've given me indigestion relief for 15 years on prescription, which I pay for. And, it's £9 a prescription and, it adds up.
It's not cheap, yeah.
I watched one of these videos. I don't know which one of the keto carnivore exports it was, but they were saying, look, very often indigestion is because you don't have enough acid. Now, I've been trained, the doctor, the acid hurts in my stomach. So clearly it makes sense that you've got too much acid and it's burning. So they give you antacids to take the acid level down. And that's what I've been on for years. And I knew I couldn't eat things that create a lot of acid. Spicy food gave me a lot of pain. Anything that was very rich gave me a lot of pain. Taken antacid, and I lived on Rennies and I lived on the prescription stuff. And I watched this video. I don't know which one of them it was, whether it was Ken Berry or Eric Berg, or but they were saying, low acid and bring in apple cider vinegar, and then if that's not enough, there are stronger things you can bring in. So initially my head sort of was an immediate fear about acid hurts me. And then I thought, well, they've been right about everything else, so I'm going to give it a go. So I bought the apple cider vinegar, started taking it. Within 2 days, I kid you not, 2 days, my indigestion had gone.
Yeah,
and
it's funny,
it was
isn't
incredible, absolutely incredible.
It's funny,
And
we
it's a
tell people it's
fiver a bottle.
yeah. No, we tell people it's too much acid. I mean, in my bottle here, I've got water and apple cider vinegar with a bit of pink Himalayan salt, and that's my kind of homemade
Wow.
electrolyte drink. Sometimes I put a tiny bit of cream and tartar in there for a bit of potassium as well, but not very often.
Wow.
Do I need that? But yeah, I mean, sometimes occasionally, like, there's one certain brand of bacon for whatever reason that gives me heartburn. I don't know why, but then I just have a little bit of apple cider vinegar and it goes away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I, for many, many years, I mean, I would take medications for heartburn and reflux, for many years. And of course, I would tell people exactly the same thing. It's an excess of stomach acid. We need to knock down the antacid, get the antacids on you, knock them down, and that'll be fine. And yeah, actually, then often we tell people, yeah, actually, just maybe try some apple cider vinegar, and it actually goes away. So it's clearly not a lack of acid,
No.
And you mentioned a few times, of course, my podcast, James was saying that he, was taking betaine HCl to actually increase his stomach acid because he just didn't have enough. I found previously my zinc levels and iron levels were very low, were low on carnivore. And it was actually because I was diluting my stomach acid with water around meal times. So that's the thing. The acid is actually, it's there for a reason,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
interfering with these things, and that's a shame. But I mean, it's a real shame that your GP didn't kind of really acknowledge that, and I don't blame them, because they probably didn't even have time to read the letter, to be fair, in England. I mean, I remember what it was like back in England as a GP. I wouldn't go
But
back.
also, it was the timing. This was in the height of COVID. And so
Yeah.
I went into this keto carnivore in May the 4th, 2020. We were 6 weeks into lockdown here in the UK. And by September, I was back. I'd lost 50, 60 pounds. My health was
Wow.
back.
Wow.
Everything, my figure was back. And I was concerned about the weight, as a hypnotherapist, helping people with weight and seeing myself getting fatter and fatter every year, and kind of, and obviously those sugar cravings kicking in didn't help that. But it wasn't just that. It was just my whole
Yeah.
kind of metabolic rate just went skeweth.
Mm.
And by the September, I was back. I dropped 2 dress sizes in 4 months. And people say, oh, it's unhealthy to drop weight too quickly. And literally to go from 14 stone to 10 stone in 4 months, a stone a month, 14 pounds a month is classed as fast, rapid weight loss and probably very unhealthy. I looked fabulous by September. I sent you some
I've
before and
seen the
after
pictures.
photographs, but
Yeah.
I also went blonde at that time, which isn't my natural color. I thought, oh, new me, let's have a new look.
Yeah.
That lasted about a year, and now I'm back in my dark hair again. But yeah, the other thing that happened was the inflammation that I had in my body, which I didn't know was inflammation. Nobody ever told me it was inflammation. But I had what I now realize is kind of lymphedema, like lots and lots of fluid, my legs, my ankles swelling up,
Yeah.
very, very painful. And the reason I had all this so-called arthritis was actually the inflammation in and around the joints.
Yep.
And when I lost all of the water, all the arthritis went. I mean, there were days when I couldn't, the pain in my fingers. I mean, I type and stuff on the computer, but all of that went within about 10 days. But what didn't go 6 months on was I got rid of most of the inflammation, but I still had water retention around my ankles. Even though I'm a healthy weight, I'm full kind of ketovore, carnivore kind of thing. So I went to see a naturopath after 6 months, and he ran bloods, and he asked me if I could get a copy of the bloods my previous doctor had, a proper GP as opposed to a naturopath had run, so he could compare them. And I went to him because I said, I feel fantastic. I think I fixed everything except for the water retention. I do still have this. It's definitely worse when I eat carbs, and my body is like a little sponge absorbing from those the carbs, the water stays. But I haven't had carbs for 6 months, but I've still got water retention around the ankles. So he suggested that I get a rebounder, which what's that? A little mini trampoline, and don't jump up and down on it. Just literally sort of push your ankles into it. It'll act like a pump to push that water up. So I bought the rebounder, 50 quid from Amazon, and got on that 2 or 3 times a day for 5 minutes, and it all went away. So sometimes we need a little bit of extra help,
Yes.
So you're going to figure out, have you fixed everything? Are there still some bits left? What can you do about that? And then work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, yeah, just to bring it back a little bit, it's amazing that you found, cures for these 23 kind of conditions, some of which you were told basically had no cure. I was reminded of this today. Actually, I saw two patients actually back to back. General practice is funny like that. You don't see things for ages, and then it's like the London buses. You wait an hour, and then three of them come along all at the same time. Um, but English people will understand that joke.
I get that, yeah.
To be fair, it's the same here in Australia. I'm sure it's the same everywhere. I was talking to patients about precordial catch syndrome. I don't know if you know what precordial catch
No, I don't know
syndrome
what
is.
that
It's
is.
not a very common, well, it's actually a very common condition, but not a lot of people know what it is. And I know what it is because I have it myself, or at least I had it. And it's a condition where you get chest pain. And it's very often around the heart, usually just underneath the kind of left nipple area, but it can be almost anywhere. And it really feels like it's your heart. It feels like it's your heart that's actually in pain. So people come in saying, I've really got chest pain, and it really hurts, and it's right here, and it really can hurt. It's very sharp pain. Sometimes it's like a dull ache. Sometimes it's just like a sharp pain, and it usually lasts for maybe a couple of minutes. But all the tests are always fine. Yeah, nothing. Your chest X-ray is fine. Your ECGs are fine. Your blood tests are all fine. Nothing ever found. And so very often people just go, doctor to doctor to doctor. They keep coming repeatedly back with this chest pain, nothing ever found. And then just eventually get told, it's just anxiety, kind of go away. And some people just accept that, fine. Well, I'm not anxious, but fine, whatever. It's not killing me. It's fine. I mean, I was about, 10 years later and I was like, well, I haven't died. It's probably not my heart, but still don't know what it actually is. Eventually I learned it was this thing called precordial catch syndrome. But I saw these two patients back to back, both of them, metabolic syndrome, highly inflamed, all the usual kind of stuff. And they came in with this problem, both of them back to back, not related, didn't know each other. And I said to both of them, I printed this thing out for them and said, look, I think, you've got precordial catch syndrome. And I said, look, read this. I'm not going to tell you about it, but read this. Tell me if you think this is you. And they read it and they go, yeah, this is exactly me. This is literally what I have. What's the cure? And I said, well, medically, conventionally, there is no cure. And we don't know what causes it. But we know it's real, but we don't know what causes it. And you can see their kind of faces just go, oh, really? Yeah. There's no cure? I said, well, conventional medicine, there's no cure. But I have it and I got rid of it. And they go, oh, how did you get rid of it? Because I had it for 20 years. It was a daily occurrence, 3-4 times a day, this terrible chest pain. And I noticed when I went low carb, it got about 90% better. When I went keto, it got maybe like 95% better. When I did fasting, it got a little bit better again. And then when I went carnivore, disappeared completely.
Wow.
So even like intermittent fasting keto was a lot better, but it was still a daily occurrence. It wasn't like 20 times a day anymore. It was maybe once and short-lived, but it was still there. But on carnivore, 6 months, I haven't had a single episode, which is just incredible. And these conditions where there's no cure, technically no cure, yet we're curing them with carnivore, which is absolutely amazing to me. And it's such a shame that, doctors are not willing to listen.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Well, the difference in my bloods between the bloods the doctor had run in the April with the bloods that I had run again the following January with the naturopath were huge. They were huge. She said, your vitamin D level at your age, I'd be proud to have, and I'm 27. You've got a fantastic, what are you doing? And I said, I take a supplement, vitamin D3 with K2. I take that. I take magnesium with zinc, and I live carnivore keto. That's the way I live, and that's basically all I take. And the odd electrolyte, I make sure I've got plenty of good quality salt. And I couldn't have HRT because there's a contraindication for me. The pill nearly killed me. I ended up in intensive care. So they were saying, when you're older and you go through the menopause, you can't have HRT.
Avoid, yeah.
So you're going to have to just suffer, get on with it. So that wasn't ever a thing. But yeah, the blood showed that my thyroid had been on the floor, and that was why I was so tired, and obviously not helping with the weight because when the thyroid's low, you've got those issues. So it was all normal. It was all fine. Interestingly, except for my protein levels, even though I've been carnivore, predominantly 90% carnivore, 10% keto for 6 months, my protein levels were really low. And he said to me, even though you're eating a lot of protein, your body isn't absorbing it. So I had to do a little bit more work to try and correct that, and that's now okay. But in going back to the intuitive eating, keto, what I didn't like is actually quite strict in its ratios of the macros. Have this amount of protein and have this amount of fat and have this amount of veg. And I was doing that, and then I was doing carnivore, which was basically all protein. And my body kept saying to me, more protein. I need more protein. So I was ramping up. I did a little bit of research about what the higher protein foods, because I always think steak is the best protein, but actually there's about 24 grams of protein in a steak, but there's about 42 in things like some of the fish and stuff like that. So I was the tuna, and although tuna's full of mercury, but I thought, right, I'll have some tuna and I'll have some salmon, and I was just trying to bring in more and more protein. But it took my body about a year to regulate the protein. It just wasn't absorbing. It was going straight through me. Whether that's because I don't have a gallbladder, so I'd eat more and more and more protein, and perhaps most of it was just going straight through me and out the other side. But I did find it difficult to absorb protein. I bought one of those smart scales. When I get on the scale, it doesn't just tell me the weight, but through the app, it'll tell me my water levels and protein levels and subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. And it was saying my visceral fat now is 7%, which is fine. That's really good. And, all of my rates are now pretty good, but the protein was in the just low area. And I'm like, I live on steak and eggs and fish and cheese. Why is my protein so low? But I had to just keep working with it, and eventually it fixed itself. We get there in the end,
Yeah, and it comes back to intuitive eating again, and trying to listen to your body, and just I think carnivore certainly, and keto I think does to a certain extent as well, give you those kind of signals back, and relearning those can be difficult for some people, though it does take time to actually understand what those signals actually mean. I think what you said about keto though, and struggling there with the macros and the kind of the ratios and so on, I know a lot of people do struggle with that, and low carb as well. I know I've personally spoke about my struggles with low carb and keto and the sugar addiction and the loophole. I'm the loophole guy, that finds the loophole. How much can I eat today? But with carnivore, I mean, I honestly just call it food freedom. And yes, it's a narrow diet, but I don't have those sugar addictions anymore. I think they're still there in the background. I'm sure if I opened a box of Tim Tams, they'd all be demolished. But Tim Tams you don't get in the UK, but Tim Tams are all gorgeous. But I mean, just Australian chocolate biscuits. But I'm sure if I opened a box of Kit Kats or something, they'd all be gone, as well. But I just don't have that craving for those anymore. I can walk past them now, and I don't have to worry about the macros or the calories or how much can I eat. It's just, if I'm hungry, I eat. If I'm not hungry, I don't. If I feel I need more protein, I eat more protein. If I need more fat, I eat more fat. I open the fridge. What's for dinner? Don't know. What do you want, stomach? Tell me what you want. And I just work with my stomach and my eyes, my nose, my mouth, and to work out what to eat and how much, which is really freedom, actually, for me, which is really very, very nice. I'm conscious of time because we've been speaking for about an hour and a half now, Julian. It's been really great talking to you. Was there anything else that we haven't touched upon? I know we've spoken about your book, of course, and we spoke about fiber and some other things you wanted to talk about there, the inflammation and so on. Was there anything else that you wanted to discuss that we haven't spoken about so far?
No, I think we've covered everything. It'd be wonderful if people wanted to pop over to my YouTube channel and my new podcast. My podcast came out in January, so it's new, but it's growing, and it's a spiritual podcast, but not just that, mind, body, and soul. So I've done a couple of episodes on the body and health and keto carnivore, as we know. The episode I did last week, which will be out by the time this comes out, was more around the mind, on happiness, because happiness is a state of mind rather than a state of being, and explaining how we can be happier, and then sort of back to more intuitive type things. So people might find that interesting. They might not. That you'll find that.
Yeah, no, I think some of my listeners, some of my viewers would probably find that very interesting. Of course, I know I've been on your podcast, and thank you for inviting me on. And I'll put a link to that episode in the description. And that was a great, conversation with you at that point, of course. So maybe if you can, yeah, tell the viewers and the listeners all about your podcast and where to find it, how to find your YouTube channel, and I'll put all the links in the description, of course. But and also, where to find your book and so on as well, which sounds very good as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so my book is called From Hoping to Having, and it's available Amazon worldwide, and it's on ebook, paperback, hardbook, and audio version. The Audible, which you can also get on iTunes and all sorts anyway. So that's where you'll find my book. I'm on YouTube as Julie Poole under my own name. And my podcast, I've just recently renamed the same as the book, From Hoping to Having, because wherever you are in your world of what you hope to have, I try to, through intuitive life coaching and what I know, share with you knowledge that moves you from the hoping to the having in every area of your life, mind, body, and soul, physically, mentally, spiritually. And lots of the people that follow me are not particularly into spiritual stuff. And the book is not as well. It says there's a big thing that you don't have to be spiritual to read this book. Take the bits that resonate, leave the rest. And so that's where you can find me. So thank you for letting me promote that a little bit, because the feedback from the book has been incredible. And that's why I wrote it. I want to help people to live a better life, to find a way out from that job they hate, or that boss that treats them terribly, or that partnership that is just toxic, to help them find a way out of health issues and mental health issues, and to live a life that you truly do deserve to live. So that's what my work is all about. And thank you for
That's
having me.
No, you're very welcome. I mean, the book certainly sounds great. I'll have to see if I can pick up a copy as well. And certainly your podcast, sounds great as well. So hopefully people will tune into that. Thank you very much, Julie, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today and hearing your amazing story and your transition from business, corporate through to the spiritual and life coaching, and your personal health journey, of course, through low carb, keto, and carnivore, and forwards and backwards, and you're finding your own journey there. So that's been great having your expertise and experience on today's show. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode of the Meat Medic podcast. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.